Welcome to California State University Chico's online Field Instructor Orientation. This is Module 4, Effective Supervision. The learning objectives for this module include understanding the elements of an effective supervisory relationship, identifying strategies to integrate these elements into your supervision, and understanding the importance of integrating theory and practice in the field. The quality of field instruction is the most significant factor affecting student satisfaction with their field placements. We understand that characteristics that are not associated with effective supervision include age, race, gender, experience, educational status, or position in the agencies. Students really are focused on the supervisory relationship, and a high degree of satisfaction with their field placement is directly related to a satisfactory supervisory relationship. Students are required to receive 1 hour per week of supervision. The individual that provides this supervision must be able to help the student connect their social work curriculum in the classroom with their practice in the field. Some of the qualities that are associated with a positive supervisory relationship include someone who is respectful and competent, an individual who understands the importance of separating therapy from supervision, an individual who's got the ability to convey empathy and genuineness, as well as a willingness to show their own vulnerability. Taking advantage of opportunities where you might disclose to a student a particular challenging situation you dealt with or a mistake that you made, the process that you used to work back through that mistake and do it differently the next time. Those are very valuable learning experiences for students. Also, someone who can recognize and emphasize their supervisee's strengths. Students need to hear what they're doing well as areas that you feel like they need to continue to work and grow in. Someone who is flexible, approachable, and congruent, and someone who makes the commitment to supervision. The goals of supervision include promoting the supervisee's growth and development, monitoring and evaluating the quality of professional services that are being offered by the supervisee, also serving as a gatekeeper for those entering the profession. And finally, empowering the supervisee to develop a reflective approach to their practice. The goal with supervision is to really help students understand the importance of taking time to reflect on their practice, look at the experiences that they're having with their clients or consumers, considering what they might have done differently, critically thinking through situations to help them understand what values may have guided their practice decisions. These are all important parts of supervision. There are 3 functions of supervision. The administrative role looks at monitoring compliance issues, helping students understand documentation requirements, billing requirements, agency protocols, directing the student in the various activities that they'll be involved in. A second function includes the educational function, teaching, modeling, and providing guidance for skill and knowledge development. Helping students really develop some tools is the goal of the educational function of supervision. And finally, support, providing a safe environment, one that's respectful, there's a high level of trust, mutual learning occurs in this relationship, there's an openness, permission is given for students to make mistakes, there's an opportunity to process those ethical dilemmas, a willingness to look at what's most challenging for the supervisee, any transference, countertransference issues that come up, and also cultural competency. The focus of supervision is often case-related or client-focused, and this may need to be the case in the beginning of the supervisory relationships, where students are often looking for very directive feedback and guidance. Eventually, however, supervision should become less directive and more student-focused, where you're helping the student really look at the experiences they're having and developing critical thinking skills that allow them to be generalized from situation to situation. There may be some behaviors that you have to also help your student unlearn, such as advice giving or inappropriate self-disclosure or dominating the interaction or interview that they may be having with a client or consumer by doing all of the talking, asking a lot of questions. 4 areas that you may want to consider when trying to ensure that effective supervision is occurring include elements that are specifically related to the agency. Here you want to include things like finding ways to make the student feel welcome in the agency, including them in agency functions, developing learning activities that will really help them learn about the agency. Are there people in the agency that they may want to interview around the history of the agency so that they can understand what their reputation has been in the community, what their focus has been? Is there someone else they may want to talk to help them develop a better understanding of the populations that are being served by your agency? This accomplishes not only helping the student understand the agency and the populations, but it also begins to help them develop relationships with some of the other staff and colleagues in your agency. There are also elements that are related to specific learning tasks. This includes really clarifying the purpose of an assignment that you give to a student, helping them understand the reason why you've asked them to read that particular policy as it relates to a specific population that they will be involved with, a group they may be co-facilitating, but providing clarity about why they have given that particular assignment is very important. Also providing detailed directions. If there's a particular meeting this student is supposed to go, ensuring that they know when that meeting is, where it's being held, if there's any materials that they need to prepare or take with them. Providing a variety of activities is also important with regards to the learning task. Students are eager to have client or consumer contact, but I think you also want to look at, are there some community meetings they may need to also participate in order to develop a better understanding of the community at large? Are there agency meetings that they might want to be involved in? Is there some reading or research that they should be doing to help them become more familiar with the population in the agency? So providing a variety of activities is important for students. Clarifying your expectations is important, so students understand the purpose of the assignment and what you expect when they have completed the assignment. Are they to come back to supervision and share with you what they learned from that experience? Are they to come back to a staff meeting and provide an overview of a policy that they may have just reviewed for the agency? But making sure that they understand what your expectations are for them once they've completed the task assigned. And again, those early opportunities for client contact are always helpful in terms of engaging students in the learning environment. Elements that are related to the supervisory relationship include having a conversation early on where you're identifying the role of the supervisor, the role of the student, the role of the task supervisor, if there's a second person that's involved in providing some oversight to the student's learning. Helping the student understand how you will be linking theory to practice. So asking very specific questions when they come back to report to you on a specific case or situation that they were involved in. What values guided their efforts in that interaction? What behavior or knowledge of behavior did they use in terms of reaching out to that client, deciding what was the next appropriate action? So helping students understand that you're asking for that kind of information is really how you're helping them begin to link theory to their practice. Also finding opportunities to really validate the students' feelings that they're having. Often students may be entering this work environment for the very first time. As a BSW student or a first-year MSW student, their exposure to social service settings may be somewhat limited. So they're bound to have a lot of feelings that come up and in reaction to some of the experiences that they're having. And validating for the student that those are normal responses to have is incredibly important to helping them build confidence. And finally, providing clear and consistent feedback is really important in a supervisory relationship. The goal is not for the student to wait to the end of the semester to hear where they've been rated on each of the practice areas on the evaluation, but throughout the semester to be getting very consistent feedback about what you're noticing that they seem to be doing well, and areas that you're also noticing you would also like to see them continue to work on. Finally, elements that are related to the supervision meetings themselves are also important. Holding regularly scheduled supervision meetings is critical to a student's professional development. Having consistent meetings conveys the message to the student that you are committed to their professional development and committed to their learning. Also, being available outside of regular supervision time. Sometimes situations are going to come up and a student may feel like they really need to process or get some direction or guidance from you about a situation they're working with. So being available outside of regular supervision time is also an important aspect of that supervisory relationship. If you are unavailable or you know you'll be out of the agency for a specific period of time, it's really important to help the student understand where else they can go for some guidance or for some direction. Finally, reviewing the student's learning needs is an important aspect of that supervision time. Keeping a copy of the learning contract on hand is very helpful in terms of being able to pull it out and look at, okay, here are the activities that we had designated would be learning opportunities for you, and where are we at in terms of really getting you involved in those various activities. We do know that there are some behaviors that are ineffective with regards to supervision. One of those behaviors is being too directive. If in the supervisory relationship you are consistently providing students with the answers to every question they may bring up, it may be that you're too directive and that you're not allowing enough opportunity for the student to develop some of those critical thinking skills and really to develop practice skills. Also, failing to monitor the student's workload. It's important to have a sense about how many clients your student is working with. If there's a group they're co-facilitating, how is the work that's associated with that group being split up between your student and the co-facilitator. But really understanding the workload that your student is involved in is an important part of being a supervisor. Students are often very aware of how inundated most staff are with the caseloads, and they want to be helpful, but it's important as a supervisor that you're helping them monitor how much they take on. Also considering the inappropriate use of students in your agency. So as the supervisor, you are the person that should be gatekeeping what kinds of tasks get assigned to your student or what kinds of client situations might be assigned to them. You want to make sure that they are situations that your student has some level of knowledge about and some level of comfort with before they get assigned to a particular case or a particular situation. And I think you want to ensure that indeed it provides a learning opportunity for the student. We talk with our students a lot about the importance of sometimes needing to pitch in order to get things done in an agency. So whether that's making copies to prepare for a presentation or filing important paperwork, that some of that activity is critical to an agency accomplishing its mission. But it's important that, again, we go back to looking at that there should always be a variety of activities provided to a student. And finally, lack of consistent supervision is another behavior that is concerning in an ineffective supervisory relationship. When supervision is haphazard or lacks in consistency, students begin to take away that it's not important for them to have the supervision. They may begin to look to several people for guidance, and while that can be helpful in the moment, deferring to several people may not really allow one person to take responsibility for looking at that student's professional development in areas where they may need to be really concentrating some effort in learning more about. It's important to look at how you will use your supervision time. Will you have an agenda, or will you ask your student to bring an agenda? It's often helpful to develop a structure for the supervision hour that both you and your student are comfortable with. So it may start with a check-in to just give a brief overview of the kinds of activities that they're involved in. And then you may want to move on to some follow-up items, issues that were discussed in the last supervision. You may want to look at whether or not there are any ethical dilemmas that the student has been challenged with. But having some kind of structure that you and the student are both aware of that can be used and referred to as you look at supervision and how you're going to spend that time is really very helpful. What role you use in supervision is another area that you want to give consideration to. Supervisors often are in the role of teaching, counselors, consulting. So considering where you want to spend your time, and it may vary from week to week. There may be many weeks in the beginning where you are doing a lot of teaching, and weeks thereafter it may begin to evolve into more of a consultant's role. But really looking at where you need to be spending your time is important. The bottom line is that striking a balance is what is important in terms of the supervision meeting. You want to make sure that if there are administrative issues, that you're able to take care of those in a fairly short amount of time so that you can move into providing the education and the supportive role that also needs to occur during that time. And I think, frankly, checking with your student and rechecking with them consistently throughout the hour is another important aspect that you can include in your supervision. So asking them very directly, did you get what you needed to get today? Are we finished with this particular issue for today? Have we covered that topic enough? So finding the questions that you can ask that will just provide the student an opportunity to say again whether or not they got their needs met or got questions answered. Again, considering developing a template for your supervision hour might be helpful. And some of the things that you may want to consider including in that template or that structure would be the student coming in, identifying the specific cases they may want to review for that day, having them come in with specific questions that they want to make sure get answered during that time today, areas of concern that they have. If there are specific resources they are aware of that they need more knowledge about. If there is a crisis situation, being able to set aside enough time to really look at that crisis situation and what they did to work through that. And again, ethical issues, I think, are another area that you always want to check in with about. Another option or another approach is have a check-in. What do you need to get out of our time together? A follow-up from our previous session. Here are the things that we talked about last time. You were going to go do this, this, and this. Tell me about how that went for you. Administrative issues, educational issues, so professional development needs that you and your student have identified for them, making sure that you're spending a little bit of time on that each week when you come into supervision. And finally, support issues. Are there personal needs that they are experiencing? High levels of stress, exposure to secondary trauma, that kind of thing. But making sure that you're allowing enough time to check with them in that area as well. These are just ideas about how you might structure your supervision, and many of you may already have a template or a structure that you use. How do you help students connect theory to practice? This is something that certainly we try to emphasize as a program, providing our students with the opportunity to do, and it's likely to occur the most often in the field. Having them identify skills that they're using or skills that they could have used in a situation and why they chose those particular skills is probably one of the more effective ways of helping them connect theory to practice. So if they have been learning about assessment, having them talk about the specific areas that they might have addressed or included in their assessment and why they included those areas. If they were struggling with developing rapport with a particular client, what kinds of skills did they use in an effort to try to develop that rapport? What seemed to work the best and what didn't work? Asking them what knowledge base are guiding their behavior is another important way to help them connect theory to practice. So are there particular populations at risk that they are familiar with, and did they use some of that information to guide their practice? Are there ethical decision-making processes that they're aware of and they're now using that to guide their practice? Are there specific social work values that came to mind for them as they were dealing with a particular situation? And finally, having them think about and identify what it would look like if they were successful with a particular client. This then helps them begin to think about the direction they might need to move with a particular client. One consideration you might take is what values and knowledge and skills guide your practice. Taking the time to identify that may then allow you to ensure that you're sharing this with your student over the course of the year. So if you know that there are particular knowledge bases that have been helpful to you in terms of performing your job, if there are skills that you feel like have been critical, if there are values that are really important, making sure that you're having those conversations with your student is really important. We have on our website a list of social work knowledge bases, values, and skills, so you can always check out our field instructor resources to find that list. Another concept in supervision that I like to have supervisors give a little bit of thought to is the parallel process. And the parallel process refers to an unconscious process in which issues and dynamics in one relationship are mirrored or reenacted in another relationship. And this is significant in the supervisory relationship in that what you model in supervision often becomes a very powerful practice model for students in the field. So if in supervision you're modeling a very strength-based approach, where you are making sure to acknowledge your students' strengths, you're complimenting them on a consistent basis around the efforts that they have made to integrate some of their practice knowledge and skills that you've talked about in supervision, the likelihood is that the student will also go out and take the same approach with their clients. So making sure to acknowledge their strengths, making sure to compliment the efforts that they are making. The parallel process is a very powerful tool in supervision. The power differential is another area that I think is important to talk about in supervision. You, as a supervisor, have an evaluative function that comes with your role, and therefore students may perceive that you have influence over their future employment, and certainly whether or not they receive credit for their internship. Talking about that with your student, again, becomes another way that you can model a great practice behavior for their student. There's also power differentials that exist when students are working with their clients. You being willing to talk about the power differential in your relationship models for them a way that they can begin to address the power differential as they work with their clients. This is the end of Module 4, Effective Supervision. Upon completion of this module, you will have learned the elements of an effective supervisory relationship, strategies to integrate these elements in supervision, and the importance of helping your student integrate theory and practice in the field.